Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Annisa Kharismi and I will present about the fictions article for the lecture extensive reading week 10th. The title of the article is Gender Stereotypes in Fantasy Fairy Tales, Cinderella. For the abstract of this paper explores gender stereotypes and culture depicted in 3 different versions of Cinderella's children textbooks. The researcher has limited the study of fairy tales to Cinderella, the Western version that she grew up reading it, and 2 other Eastern versions, the Egyptian Cinderella and the Korean Cinderella. The characteristics of all versions represent different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. In the introductions, many scholars such as Botelho and Ratman in 2009 agree that gender, race, class, and many other ideologies are implicitly and explicitly represented in many of children's literature and more precisely in fantasy fairy tales. Thus, they may negatively contribute in the creation of our children's values and attitudes and impact their viewpoints of the real life. Therefore, some educators have criticized many of the fairy tales for their negative influences on children. They have explicitly portrayed stereotypical concepts about women, such as being passive, beautiful, weak, sexy, and dependent or cruel, though selfish and jealous, or etc. In the first point, the purpose of the study, the author has chosen to limit the study of fairy tales to Cinderella, the Western version that she grew up reading it, and 2 other Eastern versions. They are Egyptian Cinderella and the Korean Cinderella, and the characteristics of all the versions represent different ethnics and cultures. The second point is about stereotype, so we have to discuss what is stereotype first. Based on Peterson 2004, he defines stereotype as a negative statement made about a group of people in the page of 26. In other words, it means applying specific generalizations to an entire group of people. And the third point, we have to discuss about what is fantasy. Based on Ellen 2005, she claims that defining fantasy is similar to catching frog in a fishing net. So she explains fantasy by relating it to its opposite meaning, which is reality. Yet she adds to say that fantasy is unreal is to imply that it does not exist, and clearly it does. The second one is methodology. In the study, the author has selected 3 children's picture textbooks that first share similar genre, second have obedient heroines, 3 have different settings, 4th occur in different culture, 5th all are fairy tales, and 6th published between 1989 and 2006. The study aims at examining the multicultural associations of gender and beauty depicted in these 3 texts and the elements of the illustrations among them. Also, the author would like to examine the physical appearance of the heroines of the 3 stories, as it might be so gender-based, focusing on attractiveness, hair, skin, and eye color. Next, in the methodology, we have to discuss 4 different topics. The first one is data analysis. For the For the purpose of data collection and analysis, the author relied on book and article reviews and searched the internet to know more about the cultural background of the three children textbooks. In analyzing the data, the author adopts Botelho and Ratman's in 2009 critical multicultural analysis of children literature approach. So now we have to discuss the three different fairy tales version of Cinderella. The first one is Cinderella in the Western version. Textual critical analysis of this Cinderella story has revealed that there are many misrepresentations of the social feminine roles in this version of Cinderella story. First, it represents stepmother and her daughters as evils and has no mercy. Second, the father is so passive and seems uncaring about his daughter. And third, Cinderella seems to be content with her destiny for being a servant to her stepfamily. Fourth, the power is in magic. It is what every poor girl should look for to help her. Fifth, beauty, grace, luxurious dresses are what attract the attention of a royal man. Sixth, sexism is implicitly stated in the text of the story. All of these 6 negative features can be classified under gender role stereotypes. Next, we have to talk about the Egyptian Cinderella. In the Egyptian Cinderella, race depiction can be obviously seen from the first glance in the illustrations of the story. The body language of the story is full of racialism and beauty preferences of one type of womanfolk in terms of race over the other. And the last one is the Korean Cinderella. Unlike Cinderella and the Egyptian Cinderella, beauty was not very much emphasized in the Korean Cinderella. There is a slight reference of it when the nobleman met the heroine in his way to the festival. Yet, according to the Korean Cinderella and the Korean culture, feminine beauty can be seen in the female's obedience, submissiveness, and kindness, and etc. Physical attractiveness was not the first goal for men to look for their prides. Next, we have to discuss the findings of this research. Through the analysis of these 3 fairy tales and by considering, it can be concluded that the main emphasis is on the importance of beauty and physical appearance. Further, beauty and attractiveness is usually rewarded. Thus, beauty measurements mean that the heroine should be white, blonde, sexy, and fair with colored eyes. Yet, in the past-Korean culture, beauty was represented in being kind, nice, and obedient, and etc. Therefore, owing to these heroines' gorgeousness and beauty, their gentlemen chose them as their brides. So, as a consequence, such fairy tales also propagate the stereotypical conviction of living happily ever after. So we can check the conclusion by considering the analysis of the 3 examined Cinderella fairy tales. It can be concluded that even though females are the primary characters of the 3 stories, still gender stereotypical misrepresentation of females are explicitly and implicitly presented. Furthermore, gender differences and the underestimation of females are historically rooted in many of children and young adults' literature books. That's all from me. Thank you for watching this video and see you on the next video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.